Our next presenter is the guidance counselor at Queen's College. She's also the president of the Barbados Association of Guidance Counselors. She has been a guidance counselor for the last 14 years and has volunteered as a personal counselor and a trainer of counselors in the Church of the Nazarene for their annual youth camp for the last 16 years. She has a master's in counseling psychology, advanced certificate in counseling, and a certificate in guidance and counseling. She's also MBTI certified. She's a mother of 2 intelligent and beautiful teenage girls who love the Lord. She has been married to Caswell Jemmett for the last 25 years. Ladies and gentlemen, your presenter for this session is Janice Jemmett. Now, Janice's, go on. You can applaud. I was just going to give her.
Okay.
Thank you. Janice's session will be dealing with the challenges facing the job, real or perceived.
Yes, that's it.
Right. Now, this session will examine the dynamic and changing role of the guidance counselor. The discussion will examine those tools that are missing and those that are needed to give full effect to the impact needed by the office. The review of power and limits of the office to bring about change will also be examined. Again, Janice Jemmett, take it away.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Just enjoyed your lunch. Now, we normally know what happens after lunch. I hope that does not happen today. So I would try to be as fast as possible and see how that goes. Now, challenges facing the job, real or perceived, and if you listen to the narrative that went along with the topic, it looked at the tools of the counselor and the limitations of what the counselor can do, but we cannot do that unless we look at the students, because without the students, you don't need the counselor, and if you don't have the counselor, you know. So there's some things that you need for them to work. So we're going to go right into our presentation. Just a brief historical overview as it relates to counseling, guidance and counseling in Barbados when it first started out, and the research as it relates to the material that is available. It was difficult to find, but in the 1960s, there were a number of teachers who introduced vocational guidance into the schools. So it did not start out as guidance and counseling as we know it today, and I think that's why we still have there's this thought around that guidance counselors really only know how to do or to deal with persons as it relates to going into jobs, and that's where you have this vocational coming out. But in 1989, the Ministry of Education formally introduced guidance and counseling into the school. They started off with 21 guidance counselors, and then in 1997, 23 permanent posts were created. So it meant then that each secondary school at that time had a guidance counselor. So these are, as it was mandated in 1997, what was expected of the guidance counselor by the Ministry of Education. So we're supposed to assist the students as relates to their personal and social development. We're to engage the students in assessing their interests and abilities, talents, just helping them to become better students within the scope of the school system. And as it relates to subject options, the guidance counselor as well would work in that process. Plans for further education and training, as well as making realistic plans for their careers, and also to provide that forum where we can have and meet with parents and teachers, principals, the stakeholders within the life of the student. Thank you, Karen. So these are the domains that we would cover as it relates to guidance counselor within the school system. So you have the personal and social. In the personal and social, we're not only looking at relationships with student-student relationships, but also student and parent, student and teacher, whatever type of relationships that a student is involved in within the school system, the guidance counselor works with that student as it relates to the personal and social. We also deal with issues like grief counseling, any issue that you think a student may encounter. And grief does not only refer to a death of a parent, but it could be a death of a pet. Interestingly enough, any loss, interestingly enough, a pet dying for some adults would be like, you can get a cat or a dog anytime. But for a teenager, when the pet is the only person who hears me and accepts me as I am, that loss is sometimes greater than if it was a parent who died. So something like that as well, the counselor would work with. Family dysfunction. as it relates to the child and parent, how that impacts the child when the child comes into the school and the counselor deals with those issues, at-risk behaviors, abusive relationships. Those types of issues will come under as it relates to personal and social. There's the interpersonal relationships as well, how I conduct and how I manage myself. Noveline Brewster spoke of emotional intelligence, being able to manage who you are as an individual. As adults, sometimes we may have some difficulties doing that. Could you imagine a teenager who is growing and developing, have all of those issues to deal with, and then you're expected to behave in a certain manner when you come into classroom? So as counselors, our role is to ensure that our students develop well. I tell my students, my role in my school is as a support system. I help you get through this time in your life, and that's what the guidance counselor does. So we look at things as it relates to interpersonal relationships, right? Self-harm, coping skills, and we're going to go into this a little bit more in detail as we come down. Coping skills, self-esteem, anything you can think of as it relates to teenagers and what they would need to develop into good citizens, then that's what we help them to do. Behavioral issues as well, mental health issues. We're able to refer our students, get a diagnosis, and then when they come back into this school and we work with our partners, we're able to help them as well to manage along with what's going on in their lives, personally, physically, mentally, and then the work that they would have to do. So let's go down to academic subject choices. There are transitional periods within each student's life, whether it's second form. At my school, we do choices in second form. In third form, you have those options as well, and in fifth form. So these become challenges as well for the student because the way our educational system is set up, the subjects you choose in third form dictate what you do in fourth and fifth for CSEC level, which then dictates what you can do for CAPE, advanced level, or getting into BCC, or the University of the West Indies. So within that realm, we are there as well. Academic probation, as it relates to parent conferences. If the students are not performing up to standard, the counselor is there. There is one school where at the end of each year, across the year, you're working with your students, hoping that they will do what they're supposed to do. You're working with the parents. So you have students who, if they've done poorly at midterm, they're interviewed by the year head. The parents are informed. If by the time we're down to the end of the school year, parents are brought in, but they're brought in along the line. And during the summer, you meet with parents and the children, and that includes the guidance counselor, the deputy principal, those three persons along with the parents. So even during the summer then, it's not just that time to sleep all day, but parents are expected to, these are the things we're going to put in place to make sure when your child comes back in for the next year, he or she is ready to move on. So our work does not end at 2:35 or July the 4th when school is over. There's still things that we are doing as well. So then we move on to learning difficulties. Those are things that we will work with, whether it's the ADHD, ADD. There's the oppositional defiant disorder, which some of those in authority will say, okay, man, a child is hard ears. Just plain hard ears. But there's a diagnosis for that where the psychologist says, there's a reason why this child opposes you or is defiant all the time. And as counselors, we need to understand that and help those who are in authority understand that, and we need to deal with those students to ensure that they fit into the system that we have established in our educational system. And then you have those who may repeat. Some counselors have programs where there is an after-school program. Teachers volunteer their time, and they work with these students individually to bring them back up to scratch. And the next step then would go with, especially those who have sixth form schools, where students are looking to apply to university, whether it's in the West Indies, inside the region, or if they're looking outside of the region, whether it's England, Canada, you name it. Counselors have to know how to operate, how those systems operate, so that when our students apply, they're not disadvantaged. And thinking of scholarships, different exams that students will have to take, counselors need to know. So you have to be reading up about all of that information. You need to know so that when your students come knocking on your door, you have that information. So there are a number of activities that a counselor has to do in any given day, and we need to be on top of everything. And being one person in a school of a role, the largest role I think I got from the counselors was 1,200. and there's one counselor. And we're going to see what a day looks like as we come along. But just one counselor to 1,200 people. I think it's crazy, but that's just my opinion. Okay. All right. As we go along?
No, it's just a question as you spoke to the issue with the different like ADHD.
ADHD. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do you, as a counselor, empower teachers to deal with this in the classroom? Because I'm of the opinion sometimes it's not really addressed in the classroom itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then those students are kind of lost because there might be granted as being deviant.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, as a counselor, empower teachers to deal with this?
I would start by saying a lot has to do with the administration of the school and what the administration would allow. In my school, and I'm going to speak to my school specifically because I'm here standing, but in my school, we have a number of activities that occur. We have, and I think other schools have it as well, where we have, what does the principal call it? But it's, and it just slipped me. But where the teachers are trained. So there's a half day that the ministry gives us, at least one day a term, professional development, thank you. And in different areas they're trained. But let's just say I have a student who has been diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder, or hyperactive disorder, and they're coming to the school, we get a report. And I get the permission from the parents to inform the students. Believe it or not, inform the teachers, sorry. There's some parents who wouldn't want the teachers to know because they may think, my child is going to be treated differently. But the teachers need to know. So there are some steps that need to be taken, whether the child needs to sit at the front of the class, whether the teacher needs to tap the child on his or her shoulder when they notice that they're not paying attention. There's some things, simple things that need to be done. So we meet with the teachers and we notify the teachers and say, this is what is happening with this child. This is what you need to do. So in some instances, you may have to type out your notes and make your notes available, please, to this student, because that's the best way this student will learn. Mind you, it puts a little bit more work on the teachers. When you think sometimes you have 36 or 37 students in a class, and you're teaching a subject like English Lang, and the students have an essay to write, and that's not the only third-year class I have, and that's the number of all the classes. So it means I have 36 or 37 essays by how many ever classes I have. And chances are you will have more than one student who has a diagnosis of that nature. So it's not only taxing on the teachers, but on the counselors as well. So that's one way that we would manage a situation like that. Did I answer your question?
You did, but I would make my comments now.
Okay. All right, so as it relates to career, there are a number of things that we do, whether it's the National Career Showcase, and you're free to ask questions as we go on. Job shadowing, skills, we bring in people to talk to our students, but we do a number of activities, all of which will take some form of administration, some form of clerical work, getting all those letters off, making phone calls to get those people in. Yes?
Yeah, I'm finding that a number of students are coming to us at university with mismatched qualifications for the programs that they want to need. And the advice is given to them from the secondary school. And at the sixth form level, now, in my time, we did the traditional subjects, English, history, geography, which give you a broad, comprehensive understanding of a range of subjects. Now, it's a lot more specialized, and when students come to you, you're finding it difficult to fit them into certain degree programs because they're not equipped with the skills to handle some of the degree programs, and they're falling through. If you don't keep monitoring them as we do at the end of every semester, they're falling through the cracks in a number of ways, especially those coming from BCC. Some of the sixth form schools, they recognize, oh, why don't I do sociology anymore? They want to do management, but they're ill prepared for that. And the university is the one taking the blame now for putting out these students who can't cope in a number of instances. They're struggling. And I think a lot of better advice must be given at the level of the pre-sixth form, sixth form, before they choose their degree options, to make sure that they dovetail well with the narrow range that the university has to offer as well. And I don't get the impression that that is done in some instances.
I hear you. What I can say is that in some instances, students do get the information from the counselors, but it also ends up that this is what mommy wants me to take. So I may have a student who wants to do French, is very good at French and failing Spanish, but mommy is studying Spanish now. And I could help you study Spanish. Or I'm doing accounts, so I'm an accountant, and I could help you out. It's okay, you choose the subject. The child does not want to do the subject. But mommy and daddy are saying these things, so the child does what mommy and daddy says. And unfortunately, that happens a lot. It happens a lot where you were saying, okay, you want to study medicine, and this is easy. You must have, to CSEC level, chemistry, physics, biology. It doesn't matter where you're going to study. But my mother said, you don't need biology, or you don't need physics. But the guidance counselor said, you must, you got to, you have to. And that's why I say all the time to my students at third year level, because that's when they make their choices. You must have these subjects at third form level. But mommy says differently, daddy says differently. I went to my doctor said, well, I didn't do biology. And I'm thinking, how come your daughter didn't do biology? I've had students tell me this, so that's why I can say this. They don't do it at CSEC level, which means you cannot do it at CAPE, O level, CSEC, right? Which means you cannot do it at CAPE. So you can't do it at CAPE. When you apply to university, you will not get in.
One of the things that we're battling with at university is whether guidance counselors or the larger academic community must also temper the ambitions of some students with what the market in Barbados can offer. A number of students come to us, I want to do this in Barbados, and then they put pressure on the university to find a degree program. They want to fit into a degree program to offer A, B, C, D, or E. And I think from very young, they're watching television, they're reading it, for example, and they think that they can run ahead and do this. And the frustration is building up at university, and they're hearing it every semester. We don't offer this. You don't do this in Barbados. You don't get that. But there must be a correlation between what the market here or in the Caribbean is offering and what the type of advice that you're giving students to help avoid some of that frustration that is building up in a number of our young people by not being able to so-called have their dreams fulfilled and their expectations met. It is putting a lot of pressure on government as well to provide jobs for students in areas that our society is not equipped to provide.
Not as yet.
Yes.
And even with the courses that university would offer me, as yet, that university is able to offer as yet.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when every student I met wanted to be a forensic scientist.
Or criminologists.
CSI, that's what that's what everybody wanted to do. So, and I'm sure the other counselors can support me. We have to battle with the expectations of the parents and what the parents want for their children to have. Your child is failing a subject over and over again, and the teachers could assess and say, but this child is trying his or her best. But her best really is not the 90s or 80s. The child's best may really be the 49 or the 48, because the child does not grasp those concepts. And that's something that parents have a difficulty grasping and taking and accepting, because my child may not be able to do this subject as well as another child, for whatever reason there is. So I do agree with you, we need to tailor, we need to direct, but you also have to think of, as it relates to the subjects that are offered within the school system and the prerequisites for that subject if you plan to do sixth form school. So a child may choose a subject based on what they think they want to do. Or let's say, for instance, management of business. At CAPE, you can do either accounts, principles of accounts, or principles of business at CSEC level. If you choose principles of accounts at CSEC level, you can do principles of accounts and MOB at CAPE. But if you don't have POB, you can do entrepreneurship. So there are limitations there as well within the secondary school as it relates to option choices coming out of the fifth form going into sixth form. And I guess the same thing happens when you leave then sixth form going into university. Okay, so as it relates to career, so we'll move on. Real or perceived, that's the, yeah. as it relates to the classroom. And I have real and real because really and truly when you think of perceived, I had difficulty grasping that, you know, and so I have real and real because this is what it is, and this is what we deal with every single day. So you're sitting now in a classroom, and you have girls and boys. One teacher actually has either 36 to 37 students in their classes. One guidance counselor would have that, which means the teachers would have that as well. So you're sitting now with students who are struggling with their sexuality or struggling with homosexuality. And this is on any given day in a class. Then you have the behavioral issues. Somebody may be dyslexic. You have the defiant, or you just have the angry student for whatever reason. Then there's maybe somebody who's grieving. A child who witnesses domestic violence on a regular basis. You have the self-harming or suicidal ideations, or those who have thoughts of taking their own life. I don't think so either, but I did hear it, yeah. Yeah. You have the hungry student. And I specifically put in the hungry student. I don't know if you've ever tried doing anything when you're hungry. Anybody try functioning when they're hungry? I can't function unless I have breakfast in the morning. If I don't have breakfast, I am on slow, so I must have breakfast before I leave home. But having a hungry student in a classroom is like a bear unleashed on you, and we are having more students who are hungry, who are coming to school hungry. In some instances, there are some parents who really do not have it to give. In some instances, the child may get up late, so mommy made breakfast, or my mother does not cook during the day, so I have to wait until I get home. And parents are not teaching their children as well to take care of themselves, do those small tasks like put on the kettle, get some hot cocoa, hot chocolate, cup, water, fry an egg, scramble an egg, do something and eat. But there's some instances where parents do not have. And counselors across the island have created programs or helped create programs where they're providing lunch and breakfast. In one school, I know for sure there is a breakfast program, but this breakfast program is monitored by some teachers who volunteer and bring food in, and the home ec teacher decides, okay, I'll make the breakfast, just let the students come. So they're doing the breakfast, teachers are volunteering and bringing the stuff because the parents, PTA gives money to the schools to help take care of those programs. The parents are losing their jobs. So the money is not what it would be. So we have to find ways to supplement. And that's one of the things that they're doing. You have persons who are being bullied or being abused. And once before, you may witness a student being bullied and you can deal with it. And I think most schools have a zero tolerance, if not all, for bullying. Cyberbullying doesn't take place in school. It takes place in home. I remember there was a year where one counselor in one semester, they dealt with about 3 or 4 serious issues, all of which started at home with a computer that has the camera, cell phones, the texting, and all those issues started at home, but they spilled into the school. Cyberbullying is very serious. But in spite of all of that, you have the well-behaved student, you have the academically sound student, and you have the high flyers. So they're also thrown into there. Those are ones, the minister mentioned that as well, those are ones that you have to look at too. Because a high flyer only gets 80s and know nothing about failing. And the moment they get 77 or 78 or 79, the entire world comes crashing down. So you have to find a way now to help that student understand that's not failure. And even if you fail, it's not the end of the world. So those are things that we would have to work with. So any of that could happen in any given day with those number of students. The guidance counselor now, this is just 1,100 students. There's one school that has 1,200. But one guidance counselor for every 1,100 students. And on any given day, you're going to have walk-ins. I remember one day going into school with my bags some years ago, and the principal meets me at the door, takes my bags with my hands, say, go to the boardroom. But this was after being on the telephone over the weekend. This student checked for every single gem in the book until they found me. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm on the phone. talking. So I'm thinking, okay, this should be a little easier when the parents come in. They'll come a little later. Principal met me at the door and just took my bags out of my hand. And that's how my day went. And I haven't gone to class yet that day. So my 35, 33, 34, 37 students, somebody has to find, the deputy principal has to find somebody to sit with them who had planned to do something in their off time, and then I have to sit with my class. So meetings, you're called into emergencies, whether it's with the deputy principal, the principal, the teacher. You have to take calls. There's paperwork that you have to take care of, and obviously you have class. So anytime there's a crisis, anytime you may be in a meeting, it means then that you cannot be in class. And we have to be in class because we are under, if I get the wording correctly, we are under the Teachers Service, it's Teacher Service Act. I think that's the correct thing. So we have holiday, the same thing the teachers have holiday and everything of that nature. But that's what then the day goes like, and you have all of these things going on at any given time. And as counselor, we are expected to manage, we're expected to cope, we're expected to make sure that everything goes right. And I think for the most part, we give 100%. That's what I believe. I think that's my last slide. Oh, any questions before we go on to this section? You want to ask your question now? Okay. All right, so that's that. And then we have what every school needs, not just a secondary school, but what every school in Barbados needs. There has to be a team. You can't just have one guidance counselor. I wouldn't say it drives me crazy. Pardon me? Sometimes you have that feeling of being overwhelmed. There's sometimes you just, for me personally, and this is just Janice because it's how he behaves, there's sometimes when I think I would want to cry because I need to be in class. I'll share with you an example. I had a student who came to me, this is when I first started out, who came to me and she said, Mom, I needed to talk. But I knew I had a class that I needed to go to. And I said, okay, come back to me and we will talk because I have a class. This is when I first started. She never came back to me. And I knew in that moment that I had lost that child because she had a need, but I got these 34 children here that if they start a fight and somebody gets hurt and I'm not there, then I'm responsible. I've neglected my duty. But I have a duty to this child that comes knocking at my door with a crisis that needs my help. I learned from that though, and I realized whenever a student needs me, I call the deputy principal and say, okay, there's a student with me, can't make it to class, so somebody's gonna have to cover my class. Sometimes I don't even get to call. So my class is left unattended and I have to go and tell the deputy principal, I didn't get to class today because, and I pray, Lord, don't let these children kill each other when I'm supposed to be there, but I'm also supposed to be here. So there's something in our system as it relates to guidance counselors and what we are supposed to be doing. There's a misunderstanding, I think, because as guidance counselors, for me personally, my first role is to counsel students. I enjoy the classroom interaction, by the way. I love that. But my first role is to work with the students, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's with a group. But I think we need a team approach. We certainly need more than one guidance counselor within the schools. It would be nice if there's a male and female to complement. I find girls are quite easier to walk in. The junior boys, I find they're coming quite easily because they're so young. But as you get older, the boys tend to stop me on the corridor and would ask me a question. And I'm thinking, why not come to my office? No, ma'am, I'm good. But you got me here in the corridor asking me the same thing that really and truly we need to discuss in my office. But that's how the older young men would work. You know, they don't want guidance counselor in the office. No. But girls do that.
My colleague here is saying it's not manly, but I'm curious in something. Increasingly, as I say that in universities, as the problems come up, I can understand all that you're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
But are we not chaperoning students to the point where we're almost encouraging to lose a sense of independence, of resolving their challenges? Increasingly at universities, when they come to us now,
Mm-hmm.
they expect you to as if they can't think independently now unless they're guided through every step along the way. When I went to school, there was no guidance counselor. You learn to figure things out and learn the ropes with intuition in some extent, and you build different skill sets.
Mhm.
Where are these other skill sets built into the students to develop that sense of independence, thought, action, that there will not always be someone there to hold your hand, and you have to stand on your own and do it. Resilience and those type of values. Fortitude. And a number of schools in here have values of picture widened with the star, Parajra, Anastra, through difficulty, we build strength, all these models. When do we teach these students these values?
But that's not what counselors do. We don't tell children what to do. That's not what we do. What we do is to help them to think, to problem solve. You come to me with this issue. you come to me with this issue. I'll take your question or statement. You come to me with this issue. We go through the process. Okay, what are your options? What is available? Or even, why is this an issue? You may not say it like this, but you help them to think. Resiliency. When I become resilient, how do I become resilient? It takes a crisis, a situation, to help me pass through the realize, wait, I got through that and I'm still here standing. It's not something that you are taught as in this is how it is, but right, it's not that abstract. There's situations that shape us, that help us. And we pass through that situation, we realize we got through it, but another situation hits us and I realize, okay, there's some other things that I have to draw on before I can pass through this one. So it's not static is the word I'm looking for. It's more of a process. So when you think of resiliency, that's what it is. But as counselors, I don't tell the child, okay, this is what you need to do. A, B, C, D. Once you do that, you're going to be good. Because that's not how it works, and it will never work like that. And even in giving, we help them, we ask them the questions. And they come up with the answers. You may be guiding in that you want them to think, you want them to even ask questions or articulate what's going on up here. And when they start to articulate what's going on in here, you have a better idea, and then you can ask the questions that may get them into the right direction. But at the end of the day, that student must be in control of that decision that they make. Because if we sit down and say, do A, B, and C, then they're going to say, you told me when things don't go right. You told me, and now look where I am. I don't want to be in that position. So that's how we have to do. As it relates to the hand holding, I think sometimes we are a bit guilty of that. I had a parent call me some years ago. Her son had gone over to the other school for sixth form, left us at fifth and gone over to the other school. And she called me to say thank you for all that I had done. But he was now in this new setting, and she found that we babied him too much at our school. And in my thinking, I don't think we babied him. I think we did what was necessary at that time for him to help him through that process. But now he's in this new school. He knows no one. So his situation has actually changed. So now he must do what he needs to do. So I'm hoping that he learned what happened at our school and was able to put it into practice. And he probably did, because you say, no, he's a lot more independent. He's able to do A, B, and C. But that's what he learned here. So sometimes you need, I think, in my personal opinion, if it's the mother in me or the counselor in me, sometimes I think we need to hold hands. Sometimes, not all the time. There's sometimes I think a student needs to be carried, but most of the time, that student needs to walk on his or her own, and the counselor sometimes needs to walk alongside of that student until we step back and we just watch that person go. That's how guidance and counseling looks for me. And I think for most persons, counselors who are here in the room.
I just have two comments I'd like to share with you. And it's in keeping with the theme of the conference, facing tomorrow with today's students. And in relation to two things. One, the role of the guidance counselor. I was not aware that guidance counselors are actually assigned classes.
Yes.
And I'm a bit concerned that it defeats, in my opinion, the role of the guidance counselor. A guidance counselor is someone, in my opinion, who should be accessible to students
At all times.
and not be assigned to teach a class with 36 and 37 students. Because the government can't afford to send you 2 or 3 guidance counselors.
No.
So you have to be in a position where you are easily accessible to students. And as we look at the challenges facing our students, we need to really define your role as a guidance counselor to make it a bit more meaningful. to the students and the student population. And I would advocate that such guidance counselors have to be outside of the classroom and not be teaching 36, 37 students in a large group. You can have sessions with them periodically, which can be timetable,
Yeah.
but you should be out of that system. Now, the other point I want to make, and again, in keeping with this theme, when you showed your slide on real and receive, or receive,
Real and real. Real and real. Real and real.
I am wondering now about the role or the future role of teachers in working with guidance counselors in achieving certain things. And when I saw your slide, I thought of the training of teachers and how effective is that training in dealing with the issues that we have or we are confronted with today. And if you look, and I saw the head of Erdison earlier downstairs, I'm sorry she wasn't here, but I do not think that the training that teachers receive in the diploma program adequately meets the needs of the challenges that are currently existing in schools. And if we want to be a bit more futuristic, we have to look at the training, retraining of teachers, and not only on a one-shot thing in terms of a DPED, but a continuous training for those who are engaged in education, because it will assist you in the execution of your duties.
Yes.
So those are the 2 points I want to
I
make.
agree with you.
The role of the guidance counselor and the role of the teacher in facing tomorrow with today's students.
I certainly do endorse Karen's sentiment, because when I look at the real and the real, irrespective of which side of the screen they're on, to me these issues don't stop when you meet with the guidance
No.
counselor. I mean, these are part and parcel of the student's life.
Yes.
So how are the teachers prepared to deal, say math teacher, someone who is struggling with homosexuality? I mean, and those are things that we need to discuss openly as well, because it's a fact of life. And I agree with Terrence that teachers have to be prepared to deal with all of these things, and the training is going to be very critical going forward.
Yeah.
If you look at deviance, if I'm teaching a class and I have students who are angry and deviant, perhaps it might be that my strategy in teaching might not be very appealing to them.
That's a
So
possibility.
they're not very engaged, right? So it has to do a lot with the retrain of teachers in terms of technology and strategies to address these issues.
How I get around that, very early, I started to do it in second year. I would do learning sales tests with my students, all of the students I have in the second year. But then I dropped it first year because I realized the students were coming in and the questions the parents were asking, I felt that even first year. So we do a learning sales test, 3 basic, auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, which is your preferred learning style. So I'm here talking to you. You're not really involved. You're not doing anything practical. I'm not giving you any activities. For the kinesthetic students, that's driving them crazy because they want to get up and move. They want to get involved. So what I tell my students, your teacher may come in and just talk, or they may write on the board, and you may not like that. But when you're doing your revision, when you're on your own, then you use your preferred learning style. Sometimes in sitting in the class, you don't get that. But when you can do something that you like, do it in a way that you like it, then it may make it easier for you. And you think, okay, well, when I leave here, I know that I can do something with this material. So even helping them to develop methods or tools for studying, that's what I did with my first years last year, second form now. So they developed different tools, this first year, ways in which they could study, whether to create their notes down to cue cards or develop games to learn verbs in the foreign language. So different things they did to help make and stimulate them when they have to sit in the class with a teacher who decides, well, we're going to stand up and I'm going to tell you this is what you need to do.
But that's what you did as an individual.
But I'm speaking on behalf of the association and the counselors and what we do.
And some of these things need to be adopted at probably a national level to have a bit more of a unified approach to these things. For example, a teacher dealing with
ADHD and ADD.
right, those things. I'm not
Attention
sure
deficit disorder. I'm
Right.
sorry.
I'm not sure if the teacher is equipped to deal with that, right? There might be strategies in place, but I'm not sure how meaningful
Part of
it
teacher
is
training.
and how much it can
You
impact
answer that?
on that. Anyhow, I'll
Uh,
shut up now.
Karen will answer to that.
As counselors, we have had to find very creative ways to empower our teachers and to assist in the learning of students. I can speak from at my school, and I know that a number of counselors have had to do these things. We are, let's be real, we are operating in an environment where we are challenged financially. We have financial constraints that are very real, and we have time constraints that are very real in terms of the syllabus and the curriculum requirements. So what we have done, one initiative that I took was for Teachers Professional Day to invite a trained psychiatrist to come in and talk to the teachers, giving them information on the different disorders that are popular, that we are seeing more and more, that years ago would just simply have been labeled as hard ears our own way, and help those teachers to identify and to recognize that these issues are real and that they exist, and also to provide them with strategies in terms of managing such a child in the classroom. The other thing that I found that was very impactful was to actually invite a parent in to talk to staff. Sometimes when you see the deviant child or you see the deviant behavior in the classroom, when you meet the mother or the father or the parent and they say to you, but I am at my wit's end, I am trying my best, I am investing all that I have in this child, please help me, work with me. I have found that that has been very useful in putting a face to the issue that you're really dealing with, and it has been very helpful.
Actually, I wanted to raise the point as to what level of interaction takes place between the school, the guidance counselors, and the parents, because the students are in the classroom for how many hours? 6 hours in a day. They spend most of their time at home, hopefully some of that with their parents. On weekends, they're with their parents, and there's only so much you can do. So I want to find out what is the level of interaction. How are the parents involved in this, in trying to, because it takes a whole country to raise, honestly, a community to raise young people. And your point earlier, I want to take you up on that about you felt sort of compelled to interact with the youngster in your office, but sometimes you have to meet people at where they're at. There was nothing wrong with walking them along the corridor, taking them under a tree and sitting down and chatting and whatever.
Yeah. But that's it. And people are walking by, so it depends on what is being said. Oh, he wants it. What is being said as well. But I do agree with that.
Okay, my concern is that some of us are chairman of boards. And what role can we play? Because we don't drill down into a school to deal with these matters. And when a child comes before us with a range of all these challenges to be expelled, what should we expect from a guidance counselor? Are we out of our remit if we ask what programs the guidance counselor has in place to help rehabilitate students? For example, I am of the firm belief, and I bring examples from other experiences. At the university, we take every student's transcript and go through it to see where all the weak areas are. And then we provide academic counseling and advice to those students. At first form level, do you do the same thing where I want all schools? Matthew Farley was very fast to say that his colleagues, whatever. I want to know if for the guidance counselors, for example, you have similar strategies to target those students who are weak, those students who have already started to struggle with these problems here from first form. Have you asked for the primary school records to come forward to secondary schools? Because secondary school principals must deal with these challenges.
Yes. You have
All,
to do that.
not some.
But not all. They don't always. I think they're supposed to, but
But should it not be sent now to all? For all primary school children to come in.
must email it to me. We do that with some students, but not all. But I think there are instances, where you need to have that information because in first form you see some behaviors being exhibited. And,
Right, and you need to manage these behaviors from first form.
And get that information.
Instead, we are seeing a lot of cases where I get the impression that principals are waiting until they're ready to be superannuated out of school or they hit 16, got to go, gone. And we're not seeing, okay, what steps were taken along the way, meaningful steps, not
And there
at
must
Nichols
have
2
been
weeks,
before you reach
Vernon
expulsion
House
because
2
you can't
weeks,
expel
etc.
like that.
We want to see the guidance along the way.
We keep hearing this whenever this thing comes up, but principals are waiting to do this and principals are waiting to, right? The reality is, Mr. Leacock, works with me. While you're 33 or 37, you may have 5 with ADHD in the 37. The 22 that I can get in my first form, 20 can got ADHD and 2 can got conduct disorders. And I still only have the one counselor. He will try. I am fortunate in that I have several members of staff who have gone and done some sort of training in counseling. But at the end of the day, we are still overwhelmed. As for boards, my board, whenever I take a child to them, and I don't take the child to say expel, I take the child because I need help. The first thing they do is they ask, what have we done? And I'm normally able to provide. I've had it counseled by this teacher. I've had it counseled by the counselor. I've gone to student services. I come in here now because I don't have anywhere else to
You
go,
must have
and I'm
that
trying to save the child. I can tell you, in the 3 years I have been principal, my school has not expelled anybody. No matter what it is, we go back to the process again. Mr. Leacock can tell you that he's asked to do all the things that he's done before by the board. We see expulsion as a last resort, and let me say why. We are the school that when you get expelled from other schools, you get sent to. So I can't then turn around and send you out too. But it is a burden. You said real and real. For me, these things are very real, because if the counselor is dealing with them, rest assured from another angle, I am dealing with them on a daily basis too. Right? And I have a funny situation that my counselor is there, and it isn't that they don't trust the counselor, but they go and look at his door and they see 15 people, and so they decide, okay, they're coming through my door. And I can't tell them no either, but I am not a trained counselor, so all I can do is sit down and listen, and then find the counselor or find one of the counselors to help. Right? And these are things. There was something that was mentioned earlier about the teaching the 10 periods. We would like that you don't teach, but unfortunately there is legislation.
Yeah, you have to be in
And
the
if you
classroom.
want to protect your status as teachers, then you have to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
And to be honest, there was a time when we could have provided a ghost timetable, but we now don't have the resources to cover that. Before we could have twinned. I remember when I started at St. Lucie, we could twin somebody with the counselor, so that if the counselor had to step out. But back then we had 600 students, so I got 800 and climbing now.
So,
Just two issues here. One, I just wanted to respond to issues. We do have sheets that we send to the primary schools, and we do get back quite a few. And that does help, because it gives me a very good background. And some of the same behavior is continuing to manifest themselves. And we make necessary referrals. I also have a provision that if, instead of sending to psychiatric hospital, to send to private practice, that's a separate provision that
So
I
you have
have
funding for
to
that?
pay for.
okay.
Well, somebody
Right,
actually,
yeah.
not from the school and connection, more connection with church,
Okay.
in which they open a fund and ask me to manage it
Okay.
to help the people with psychological and psychiatric problems. Now, homosexuality issue somebody raised. That's usually a struggle. I am not aware of people who deal with these. We've had training with last year with somebody who came to show that it's an addiction and to give some strategies how to deal with. But the truth is, in terms of referring the person here to somebody for help, I'm not acquainted with sex therapists or people who deal with homosexual problems that we can refer them to. So that's a challenge there for us.
I'm not sure if you meant addiction as an addiction.
Yes, David Gorin, chairman of the Island School. I must put in a plug here for the guidance counselor at the Island School, because we had some challenges there And I must say that the school was not just waiting to get rid of those students, but the guidance counselor did whatever was humanly possible, exploring all of the possibilities, all of the various agencies in order to assist the various students. So I cannot sit here and believe or go along with the saying that you just want to get rid of this
Don't want to get rid of
the student, because I can only speak for the Eileen School. But there I know that not only the guidance counselor was involved, but other members of staff also were involved in trying to help these students.
No, I just wanted to. You know, this whole conference is supposed to be looking at solutions and finding solutions to the problems. One of the things that have bothered me since I've come so close to education is the fact that, you know, I'm chair of Alma Paris. And one of the things that, you know, that shocked me when I first went to this school was, you know, first of all, the marks that the children got, 0 to 20. And that shocked me because I'm saying we boast in Barbados of having this really excellent educational system. And for the life of me, I cannot imagine how a child in our care could go to a school from 4 to 11 plus and score between 0 and 20 in an exam. And, you know, when you raise this, people say to you, oh, some children will never learn. I do not accept that. And the person who said it had me really angry because they were a senior educational official. I am saying that we are small enough as a country that when a child comes, no matter where he comes from, no matter what background he comes from, come into our primary school system, those children should be tested at that stage so that we find help for them. Because we have enough educated people in Barbados who studied all over this world who can bring solutions to that problem. But we're not doing it. And I want to know why. Nobody's been able to say to me, oh, because of X, we don't have the resources, we don't have the funds. I think it's a lack of care. And it bothers me. I'm not saying that everybody don't care.
No, I'm processing what you're saying.
It bothers me that for many years, we have this situation has existed, and we seem to be only interested in working with those children who are bright. And you find it in the education system where as long as you come in and you don't show that you're bright, oh, you call it streaming. That's what they used to do with them. Use a dance. You put them in a corner. I am saying that you know what happens in this society? Those children are the ones that we find gonna break in your house, and then we spend millions of dollars on the prison to house them. When if we catch them at 4 years old, we can help them there, but we are not doing it. And something has to be done. An effort has to be made where we catch them there, we test them, we train people. You know, we at Alma Paris, and I'm sure it is throughout the educational system, where you have students with learning difficulties, but you have one special education teacher on a roll of 17 teachers. Something is wrong with that. They go to Erdiston and ask the question, what is Erdiston teaching these people? When they know that we have children with difficulties, but there's nothing about special education being taught. You know, so I'm saying, I'm sure at St. Lucie and all these other schools where children do not do well in the 11 plus, that you don't have teachers on the roll of the school with training in special ed. I'm saying that if we are serious, and frankly, I don't think that we are. This, unfortunately, I disagree. This is just another talk shop. Nothing's going to come of this unless people really and truly get serious and take on board what is being offered, because otherwise we do what we do in this society all the time. We can talk a problem to death, but come with a solution, it will take, I guess, until I'm gone. That's it for me.
Let me just quickly say something. On the outside of my office, I have stuck up on my notice boards classes and courses that are offered at the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic. And some people want to know, well, why would you want our students to go to the Polytechnic? Not all of our students want to sit in a class, be in front of a book, take notes, and study like that all the time. Not every student is geared towards writing a certificate at the end of 5 years. And that's something we have not accepted as a nation. Not every single individual, I don't want to use the word capable, but that's the only word you can think of, is capable of doing that and be successful. But there are some students who could look at a block of wood and all I see is a block of wood, but can turn it into something that would make more money than I could make. And that's how we have to start thinking. And that's how we have to start treating our students and accepting them for who they are. But I do understand what you're saying. I take your point. But I hope that at the end of this, it is not just a talk shop, that we will achieve something. And there are enough of us, I think, who've been here for today and will be here tomorrow, who will get behind the powers and be and say, okay, you took me out of this school for 2 days. I have a student who called, messaged my daughter and said, your mother come in school tomorrow? Because I have something that urgently needs to be done. I could be at school dealing with that, but I am here, so we have enough people to agitate to make sure that something comes out of this.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment on this whole issue of expulsion, because it's something I'm very passionate about. I am not in the classroom, so I don't know what difficulties y'all confront on a daily basis, whether you're the guidance counselor or the teacher. But I really believe that expulsion has to be an absolute last resort, and I don't really think it works. I remember maybe a year or so ago, I was walking outside the Central Bank and I saw this young, he could have been, I think he was 13. He went to a school in the city, and I said, but why are you out here sitting on our steps at 10 a.m. in the morning? He was expelled. I said, so why are you home? He has nobody to go home to. So you are sending this student on the child. This child on the road.
He was
Sorry?
or expelled?
Suspended, whatever. But you're sending this student on the road to get involved perhaps in more deviant behavior. And something has to be wrong with that. My other pet peeve is, and this is based on a comment my friend here made, from how are we dealing with this issue as homosexuality, whether it is female homosexuality or male homosexuality, because I know we in Barbados like to kick issues under the carpet, but it is real. I heard my friend explain to me, I won't share how he's dealing with it at his school, but I don't agree with him.
One of the issues, though, is suspension. Like, there's a protocol in the ministry, and I will share with you all an experience that I had. We are not supposed to put them on the road during the day. So I suspend a child, give him the letter, ask him to stay outside my office. He leaves and he goes back to the classroom, promptly gets with another child and robs a third child of $30. He comes back to the office and the first thing he says to me, you can't do me nothing, you suspend me already. So I take back the letter, which was 5 days. I issue him one for 10 days, now for the other offense of theft. I also call the police to recover the $30, right? But one of the things is that the tools that are available to us have no meaning to some students in the system. Because when I was growing up, there was no way that I was going to go home and tell my mother I get suspended. I can even go home and tell my mother I get flogged, because I do that once and I end up with about 3 floggings. Because everybody in the house beat you after you come home and get beat. But they have no meaning. The child does not have a problem with being home, but at the same time, if on the very day that you get suspended, you will go back inside the classroom and carry out perpetrate a greater offense, what can we do? We obviously can't keep him in the school with these children, other children, indefinitely, because although I heard the minister this morning and I secure the 99 and I go and try to save the one, and then the one come back and eat 2 of the 99 because he's really a wolf and not a sheep. Right? And that is a reality sometimes that we got to deal with, that sometimes we can't save. We will try very hard, but we can't. right? And
Extreme cases like that, I understand, but some of the reasons why I hear students are suspended or even expelled, I am really flabbergasted.
But we also don't deal with students in isolation either. We have to think of the parent, the home environment, the socialization, all of that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
But then there are values
Yeah.
because
Where are values taught?
a number, okay, the church as an institution, as I discussed,
And that's where it started years and years ago. That's where you went to and you learned.
it's no longer the pillar it was.
It's no longer where parents take their children to learn.
So issues of right and wrong, morality and morality are all confused now. And we are in a crisis because this is why a student doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, or relativism has taken over. How much of this should be parental? How much of this should be teachers? The teacher has also changed.
Yes.
Listening to you, you're still the guidance counselor, nurturing and nurturing and looking at children and stuff like that. What teachers do we see me? I come here. I will do whatever I have to do from 9 till 3. Anything else after that, sorry, I'm not a parent. By default, I'm not. Where should a teacher, if my philosophy is one thing, should this be for the teacher to do, or is this strictly parental? No. A teacher will tell you this is what I am being paid, and you
And
have
that
to be
is,
right.
that is the reality. That's
This
the
is
reality.
reality.
But the first teacher that a child has is not the teacher in the school. The first teacher that any child has is the parent. So we must involve the parents, and they set the value system really for their children. Because if my children know that I tell lies or I call in sick and I home laying down, that's what my child is learning. Let's take, for instance, the cell phone. You're not supposed to have a cell phone in school, it's banned. But I give my daughter a cell phone to bring to school because she has to call me, I wonder where she is. The child is being taught to break a rule, to defy authority. My child is rude now to me and say, why do you think you could behave like me like this? I didn't tell you to do A, B, and C. So the child is getting these mixed messages. Now, you want me to do A, B, and C, but yet you're telling me I could carry a cell phone to school, which, teaches me to break rules, to defy authority, and yet I'm supposed to obey you? And that's something that parents do not get, So parental involvement is very, very important. And I think within the school system, whether it is through the parent level meeting, through PTA, through conferences that we have with parents over children issues, whatever it is, but you must have that parent involvement. But if the parent decide, I ain't coming nowhere there. Do you know who I am? And I would say, but aren't you so-and-so's father? That's always my response. But aren't you so-and-so's father? That is why I'm calling you, because you are this child's father. You need to be here.
But yes, I chorus with you with all you're saying.
Mike.
Yes, ma'am. I need to go back to the issue of suspension. And I have a problem with the method of suspension which was raised earlier by my friend here. No, not the gentleman, Mr. Jackman, right. I don't see how you can suspend, if I'm a child at school, you could suspend me, give me the letter, still have me on the school premises. I have a problem with that. Because if I were that child's parent, I would have a problem with that. Because I can see that as principal, if you're going to suspend me, and I'm still on the premises, that you will suspend me at the ending of the day, whereby at the end of the school day, I will come. Right, as I was saying, at the end of the day, I will collect the suspension letter. But I don't see why you would suspend me. You say that I am suspended and still on the school premises with the letter in my possession.
But that's why the child, I think, was made to sit outside the office. The child should not have moved. He was supposed to sit outside the office. But what can also happen is that you call the parent in for a meeting immediately, because the child is not allowed to leave the compound during the day, one, without parental permission or knowledge, especially if they're under suspension. So you wouldn't send them out. So that's why maybe the parent couldn't come or whatever, but the child remains at that point because they're in suspension. You don't send them out, no. Not during the day, not without parental permission, or not without the parent present.
I am not saying that you send home the child, because I know that contravenes the law, that contravenes the rule. Right. If you send home the child. But I have a problem that if the child is to be suspended, right, that you're going to write him or her a letter, give him that letter, put him outside your office, to remain there for the whole day, and say he's on suspension. I have a problem with that. As a parent, I'm saying I have a problem with that. If you're going to suspend my child, I can see that you suspend him at the ending of this day.
So you mean the child goes back to class as though nothing has happened?
By the class, or this child is isolated.
In-house suspension. We call it in-house suspension and the... But you did, right.
You cannot give him the letter, because I have no problem with the child telling you that you have suspended me. Right? You see? But I have a problem with the principal writing a letter, handing it to the child. He's still on the school premises and say he's suspended. I can understand that, that there's a serious infraction and that the principal isolates or give the child an in-house suspension. And at the ending of the day, he's given the letter to take home to his parent.
There are some students, even when you tell them to stay there, they don't stay there.
He's just going to stand there because they go somewhere else and get involved.
You're sitting outside the principal's office.
And then they will go home as punishment. That detention, it's more of a detention
All right.
at the office, so they don't get involved with anybody else. And then they go. And sir, I
Okay.
understand Madam Watt speak that no one has done because
We need the mic
knowing that
over here
this
just so.
child is going to be
They need to hear what you're saying.
I understand. I'm saying that if this child, he is aware that he's going to be suspended, or that some sanction will be applied to him, when you are looking for him at the end of the day, he is nowhere around to collect that letter.
Many of us start to believe that children are going to
No, he's not going to be there. Some of them will not be there. So,
we are in a position to sit in first.
Okay, let's hear Ms. Warner now. Thank you.
My contribution, good afternoon. My contribution is really refocusing on this discussion. And there are a number of issues written here that sometimes they're real. But the perception oftentimes is, and I'm taking off my ministry's hat and putting on my counselor's hat for this particular comment. The perception often is that the guidance counselor does not have enough to do. And therefore, I wish counselors would have said that instead of me saying it, but I have to put in this plug as a former counselor. In some schools, the counselor does not have enough to do, and therefore, we have to send a hodgepodge down the line to the counselor. What often happens is the counselor becomes very caught up with mundane, everyday issues that really belong to the teacher to address, or the deputy, you could go up the line, the year head, whoever, really not even sometimes the principal, and becomes all filled with, I call, really issues that don't go any further. It's about this body hitting me, this body sending me out of the class. Really, really and truly, we have to start deciding what are the issues that teachers need to address and own. I think there's not an ownership in our classrooms anymore by teachers. They send them up the line and out of the class. A frustrated principal obviously says, you go home. My suggestion is there are some issues, as referred there, that can be used in school suspensions. I don't know why we have not started that in the Caribbean, in Barbados as where I live. Because in school suspensions, if we go back to the Code of Discipline for level 1 and 2 offenses, can work. Well monitored, well structured, they can work.
Yeah.
It's the level 3 violations that we need to realize that that's when the word suspension starts to be brought in. And I think now I am in my position in ministry, there are a lot of suspensions that need not have been suspensions. That's another discussion. Need not have been suspensions if an intervention was taken at the level of the classroom first. before it reached the yearhead, before it reached the principal, before it reached outside. And I think we have to start going back to the caring, the compassion, and the understanding that all children are not going to be alike.
Yeah.
We are also very different to the children we interact with. All parents are not alike, but we have to do something in the classroom as a teacher first before we start all of these referrals. We are flooding the system with labeled children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I support what you said. I would also add to that that soon from now on, maybe almost immediately, you have to add counseling for parents under your responsibility because some of the parents need counseling too.
Yes. So we can move on to the, let's move on. At least what every school needs, I talked about the team approach already. School psychologists, I think there's still one school psychologist in the Ministry of Education. Is that correct? So then what happens is when we have to refer, the wait is long. And unfortunately, not St. Lucie Secondary anymore, the Darrell Jordan, who has that fund and can send students to private psychologists or psychiatrists. Not every school have that access. So I'm going to be talking to the relevant authorities to see how we can get involved in that. But being able to make sure that the students get the care that they need when we do refer, sometimes the wait is long. And they're still in the system and they still don't get the diagnosis that they need. However, if we can make opportunities available to the counselors that you have at present, where there's training, then our work with the students can be, our assessment, it can be broader, it can have more depth. If we have the time that is available to us to sit down and work with the students, then it may alleviate a lot of the problems that teachers may experience in the classrooms, that the students may experience themselves with the issues that they are confronted with, and we're moving on, caring. Teachers willing and trained to teach the HFLE curriculum. In most, if not I think all of the schools, the guidance counselors are the persons who teach those classes. When I first started out, I had 26 contact periods. So I had 1st to 5th, and I was in charge of some teachers. And you usually got the teachers who needed to get those hours to make sure they had a full complement of courses to teach, who didn't really want to teach in that program. If you have persons who are willing and trained to teach in the HFLE program, then counselors have opportunities then to work with the students on one-on-one, to do the groups, to help the students then manage their time. Opportunities to attend conferences like this and others where it's outside of the region, but opportunities are made available to us where we can network, where we can learn and see what else is happening out there, make us better counselors for our students. I think guidance counseling is a highly stressed profession. And while we are under the teacher's service, we would have to wait 15 years. Is that correct? I don't know if it's still going to happen now, but in order to get a term's leave. It's 15 years, right, Ms. Warner? 15 years in order to get a term's leave. I haven't had a term's leave as yet, so I'm not even up to 15. But as I am saying, guidance and counseling is a highly stressed. Think of all that I have said. Okay, what we will do, we will probably have to address the Governor General, but let's just go the Governor Central Bank. And I think really for the counselor, that time should be shorter because it is a stressful job. And the myriad of things that we encounter on a daily basis, I strongly believe that one of the recommendations could be that our terms leave should come at a shorter period. I don't know if it would happen, but that's one of the suggestions. Should come at a shorter period. And also, facilities to conduct guidance and counseling. There are some counselors who do not have a designated telephone line. So they may be on the phone with the parent and somebody picks up the extension to make a call. You may not have a simple thing as your own printer or fax machine or something of that nature. Simple things that you need. A projector, those things that you need to help facilitate guidance and counseling within the school. Let's go on up before, that was the last one, so you can come back now. Yes.
I also think you need to strengthen the Ministry of Education. One of the things that we had discussed in the NACE report, I think there's only one psychologist.
Right, I mentioned that just now. Yeah, I mentioned that just now.
And we need to definitely strengthen the Ministry of Education. We had also looked at the feasibility of using the polyclinics, which are very well located, of having a consortium of psychologists,
There are
social
psychiatrists
workers,
assigned
guidance
to the-
counselors, for
yeah.
example, to, let's say, service Courage Park, Alexandria, Darrell Jordan Secondary School. And that group of persons will be designated to those schools to assist that process in zones.
We have it for nursing, the health.
Right, but
But
it
not
can
mental
also be
health.
extended
Yes.
to,
That's
if
a
you
good
can't
idea.
school, if you can't provide each school with a battery of psychologists, social workers, etc., you zone them
That's a good idea.
in central areas so that they can go out into the, because the guidance counselor must interact with parents
Yes.
as part of the process.
yeah.
And it would also, we also said it would also be part of the community drive of bringing the schools back into the community. So I don't know, that was the NACE report. I am not sure what the ministry has gone on to do. But one of the challenges that came up from the focus groups and from the different expert groups we had interviewed was that oftentimes you didn't know where the buck stopped when you had difficult problems at schools. And some principals had to take action in their own hands because the ministry took too long to make a decision. You didn't know where the point of contact was. And in your duty to care, for example, you could have a legal problem on your hand if you acted in haste and it was not the prescribed protocol in dealing with the matter. So involvement of polyclinics as a central point, if location, and guidance counselors getting together with the relevant agencies to see how best you can help facilitate some of the shortcomings that you have to deal with individually might be a step. It might have been recommended, suggested in a previous report somewhere in the ministry already, but in some of these instances you definitely have to act fast because the schools, as we've been listening, there are a number of problems that we have to deal with.
Yes. Okay, we have 5 more
Yes,
minutes.
Janet.
Yes, sir.
One question: do the guidance counselors still find it helpful, relevant? Is it still practiced across the system? I'm not talking about an individual school now, across the system, because here you're representing the guidance counselors.
Yes.
To do home visits when you have students who present certain problems that you really need to get to the homes?
Across the board, home visits. Yes, there are guidance counselors who still do the home visits. But and there's some parents who come in, but there's a time when you do need to do the home visit. No,
Okay.
but
Also,
Home.
I had asked whether it is still the practice across the board for guidance counselors to be doing home visits where it is deemed necessary or helpful.
we're gonna have one of the counselors to answer your question. Just 1 minute.
Home visits are practiced, in my opinion, and by most persons. However, we as counselors, we have to be very careful. We are not governed by law. We are not protected if we go into homes and find ourselves in difficult situations. Okay? We don't have the same type of protection, like, let's say, the social worker from the probation office or the child care board. We actually go into homes at our risk.
Yep.
So we have to be able to assess a situation well to determine our safety. And I made that point because I remember one day I impulsively went into a home in Combermere Street. If you know where Combermere Street is, in the city, Bay Street, Nelson Street, and I instantly felt unsafe. Lots of young men hanging around, and I saw certain types of behaviors. And I said, wow. And I had to try and back out of there quickly. It is not a situation that you can take lightly.
I do home visits. I mean, my training, even before I became an official guidance counselor, attached to the St. Lawrence School. I used to do a lot of home visits. Of course, you do so at your own risk. But I have found now, trained as a social worker as well, that there are a lot of problems that are environmentally caused right within the home. And the best place to meet the parents would be right at the home. Some of them don't even come to the school. They don't want to show their faces. So I go to them. But I call beforehand to let them know I'm coming. We do get, well, on my part, a lot of resolution when you go to the home and you see the dynamics involved within the home setting. And when you're addressing the issue right there and then, you do see a change in quite a bit of the behavior. So home visits are key. I wish that we could have, well, even when we do home visits, well, let's not get into the traveling aspect, but some counselors don't claim to travel at all, but they do travel.
So, and it's also when do you do the home visits? Because you're going to do it during the working period, and you may miss a class in traveling, somebody come to see you, so you have to take all of those things into consideration as well. I think our time is almost up. Yes?
I want to touch a little bit. Just
About 2 more questions.
I don't know if it falls on your preview.
She was taking it.
But in terms of weird corporal punishment, we have my era when I was going to school that we can learn from when there was corporal punishment across the board. Now you have in this era where there's specialized or special persons to do corporal punishment in the school. From the 2 spectrum, how should we go forward in relation to using corporal punishment in schools? Because there's one theory taught, or the new theory as far as I'm concerned, taught. And then the other theory, lash. Help me here, because we want to set policy. We want to help the ministry. I believe it has its place, but I want to hear from the professional.
I don't know if I have an answer for you. What I do know is that some of our students get that so much that when they come into this school, it is not the best course of action. I had a young lady that, this was years ago, not within the school setting, within the church setting, and her nickname was The Beat. She got so many lashes for whatever she did that when she got lashes, it meant nothing to her. So sometimes it does not always work. But when you have students coming from already violent homes, when they come into the school setting, sometimes that's the only place where they find peace. So you must try other ways of turning that child around. And sometimes the child might just want just an arm around the shoulder, how are you today? And that's all the child may need, like, just somebody who actually is kind, and that hand that is around the shoulder is not causing me pain. So sometimes that's, you have to look at, I think, each case individually. And I know you have not answered your question.
One last comment.
Yes.
I wanted to find out, is religious knowledge still on the school
Curriculum? Yes, it is.
It's on our curriculum now.
Yes, it is.
The second years are doing it. So I don't have second years anymore. I don't have first and third. So it's done in the second year.
I just want to commend you for an excellent presentation. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. And I enjoyed presenting to you. You're a very good audience, even although you just came from lunch.
I'd like to just make one comment to show the house is back.
You need the mic.
I'd like to make
One comment to show how effective a counselor can be. I had a young man presenting lots of problems. Came a day he had been rude to a teacher. And when I spoke to him, he said the teacher told him about his father. And I said, so why is that a problem? He says, because my father is in jail. I sat down, I listened to him for a little while. Then I called the counselor. It was an acting counselor at the time. And I told her, see if you could arrange for this child to get a visit at the prison with the father. He got the visit. And for the next 3 or 4 months, that child disappeared from the radar in the school in terms of the behavioral problems, because all he wanted was to see his father. So that is how effective one action can be.
Thank you.
That is the end of Janice's presentation. Thank you very much.